Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about understanding someone else's point of view. Now, this is going to sound like an odd topic, and I will end the video on why I'm telling you about this on a game development channel. But I want to talk about it because it's something I've always liked doing, and it gets me into trouble a lot. And I'm going to talk to you about why that is. So, understanding someone else's point of view is something I really like doing. I like asking people, why do you like that game? Or why do you hate that game? Or movie? Or sometimes political candidate, although in that one, I often just back off and go, I don't think people even know why they like the political candidate they do. Now, when I do this, I'm not trying to argue and I'm not trying to judge. I'm trying to figure out exactly what it is that led you to this conclusion. And there's a whole bunch of things I can go through when I talk to someone about this, but the biggest problem I've ever had when I'm trying to understand someone else's point of view is the person you're talking to frequently thinks that you're attacking their point of view just because you ask them questions. And I understand it's because that's the way some people do attack other people's point of views. They're like, really? Why do you think that? Really? You think that's a good reason? And that's not why I'm doing it. I frequently do want to know, why didn't you like this game? Because I loved it. Or why do you like this game? I couldn't make it past the first hour. I want to know. As a game designer, I want to know. But people also think that you're defending or justifying a point of view when you're just trying to understand it. And this happens all the time. It happened on this channel. There was something where in a comment section we were talking about gambling and microtransactions, and I was trying to explain what exactly was meant by microtransactions and why they're gambling and why it makes a lot of money for the industry. And remember, I told you the answer to a lot of game questions is money. Somebody immediately attacked me in the comment section saying, well, you're justifying doing it. And I said, no, I'm explaining why they do it. They make a lot of money from it. That's why they do it. I don't like it. I don't do it in any of my games, but I understand why they do it. And I don't know if they just didn't want to see that difference, but they're like, no, I can't believe you're justifying. Just by talking about it, you're justifying it. By the way, that is a POV I will not understand. I will never understand the don't talk about a thing because that makes the thing a real thing. It comes from some place of let's just push everything down and smush it into something. And trust me, I've had to push some things down before. I'm very happy I don't do that anymore. It also doesn't mean become one of those people going, I'm going to talk to you about all this nasty stuff, and if you complain, I'm going to say, I'm just spitting truth. I'm just saying truth here. No, you don't have to be unkind. But I do like to know why people feel the way they do. By the way, that very kind of reaction is why I don't review video games. I have a whole video about it. I'll link it below. But I do like to, when I'm playing a game, break it down, and I do like to talk to other people because I like to know, here are the mechanics they used, here's the storyline they picked, here's the setting they picked. Why? Why did they do that? Because sometimes those things don't connect together very well, and I want to know what led to that. What made you think that this system mechanic would be good for this setting? That kind of thing. The problem with doing that is the people who worked on it feel attacked. And I get it. Depending on how that kind of conversation is handled, it's very easy to feel attacked. Why did you do that? Becomes a, why would you ever do that? Which is not what I'm trying to do. But also, if I'm asking, oh, I just want to know why these things connect, the people who hate that game feel like I'm defending it by even going, oh, now I understand why you did that. Notice I'm never saying I agree with it, but I understand why you did it. I'm just trying to understand the POV of whoever had the design vision for that game. Now, this happens in a lot of areas that have nothing to do with games. I worked with someone once who had what I call a completely irrational hatred of college. She hated college. She thought college graduates were idiots. She thought college degrees were worthless. She couldn't even acknowledge that college was worthwhile for some people. And I have a whole video on self-taught versus schooling where I say some people do way better in a structured environment. If you just throw a bunch of books at them and go learn it, that doesn't work for them. If you throw a bunch of videos at them on YouTube and go learn it, it doesn't work for them. They kind of need someone to go, okay, here are the basic foundations. That leads to this. That leads to this. Now let's try applying some of the principles we just learned. They need that kind of structure to learn something. Nope. She's like, nope, that's stupid. Those people are stupid. Everybody's stupid. It was a weird wall. I don't know what college hurt her or ran over her puppy, but wow. Similarly, I always get names wrong. Names of everything. Names of products, names of people, actors. I do it on this channel all the time. People make fun of me for doing it. And I've acknowledged I do it all the time. I've known somebody for 30 years and I've messed up his name a few times when I talk to him. The weird thing about that is the assumptions people jump to. Like, I've had people of color think I'm being racist. I've had women think I'm being sexist. I've had colleagues who get really upset that I can't remember their name. I ran into a person I went to grad school with 30 years before who got really upset that I couldn't remember his name. And I feel bad about it, but it's something my brain has always done. It's not a new thing. It's not a senior moment. I've done this my whole life. And I do it with more than just names of people. I do it with names of products. I do it with names of songs, especially. When I try to think of a name of a song, I almost always get it wrong. Similarly, I struggle with pronoun use, and many people have pointed this out. I tend to use he more than anything else. I have tried in the past, I tried writing a manual that was he or she, where I'd say, like, the player sneaks up on the monster when he or she is in stealth and he or she can use his or her ability. It becomes very awkward. A lot of people go, just use they. And then when I say, well, the player walks up to the monsters and they use the ability, that confuses me because I'm like, isn't they referring to the monsters because it's plural? So I get super confused. Plus, I had a strict grammar teacher who would not allow they to be used like that, which is funny because when a person's gender is ambiguous, I commonly will say, oh, someone crossed the street and they tripped. That sounds normal to my ear. So I've also tried alternating it. I'd written one manual where every example I alternated the gender. So the first one might be, the thief sneaks up on the monster and uses his special attack ability. And then the next paragraph would be the wizard casts her spell and drains her mana. So I've tried to alternate it. That just doesn't work for some people. A lot of people don't like it. What I love is there's a video I watched recently. There's a YouTuber I like called languagejones, and I will link it below. He basically talked about how no matter what you're doing with pronouns, you're doing it wrong. And I love that video because I love getting all sides of things like that. No matter how you think, you should watch that video. No matter how you act with pronouns, there is some group of people that you are being horribly unkind to. And I love it because there's a group that think, nope, I'm so good. I always ask people what their pronouns are. He points out that there's a group of people you're being unkind to when you do that. I love it. I love it. Religion is another one. I love talking about religion. In college, I took a comparative religion class because I wanted to learn and talk about religion. I was not raised very religiously. My older brothers and sisters were. I was not. I don't even know why. I wasn't. So many people, when I tell them that I'm not religious, I usually say I'm secular. They assume that I'm anti-religion. They assume, oh, if you're not religious, that must mean that you are anti-religious and you have horrible stories about how religion has hurt you and you just hate it. And I'm like, no. It's not what I feel at all. I'm curious about religion. I'm curious why some people are so into it and other people are just lightly into it. To me, religion is like college or music concerts or therapy. For some people, it's great. It's a great experience. It helps them. They need it. It's a good thing. For other people, it's like, why would anyone do that? I get it. Now, I like I said before, I always try to say that just because I'm understanding someone else's POV doesn't mean I agree with it. It doesn't mean I'm defending it. It doesn't mean I'm supporting it. This was a problem I got into recently where I was really trying to understand why a famous writer suddenly was having trouble with certain people in certain bathrooms. And just by trying to understand where her argument came from, I was accused by multiple people that I know well of supporting her. Now, the thing that I remember being most confused at is she mentioned there being a man in the ladies' changing area at a pool. So I read her account. I read other accounts. Turns out it was a trans woman that she was deliberately misgendering. And she said it wasn't about rights. It was about safety. It was about comfort. And I'm like, well, the law gets really weird if you try to move away from people's rights into what you feel comfortable about. Because you can ask this question: what if that wasn't a trans woman in the ladies' room? What if it was a lesbian? Would you feel uncomfortable? What if it was a woman with her young son and the son was too young to go off to the men's changing room by himself, so she kept her son with her? Would that make you uncomfortable? What if it was a woman who had a mastectomy? Would that make you feel uncomfortable? There's a whole just range of things that you might feel uncomfortable about, but that doesn't mean you're allowed to legislate it away. The world doesn't exist to make you feel comfortable. But I tried to understand what her POV was, and then I realized, you know what would solve all this? Private rooms, like individual bathrooms. They had these in Europe. France, London, I should say the UK, but I only went to London. I saw this in Australia when I went there. A lot of places just have a bathroom. It is not a men's room and a ladies' room. It's just a bathroom. You go in, you shut the door, you do whatever you want to do, and then you leave. They don't have these a lot in the US. What's great about these is it means there is no concern about the gender of the person going in there, and it's private. But I also realize, because I've heard the other arguments, why we don't have those everywhere. They're a lot harder to clean. They take up more space. There's a drug use problem that can be solved by certain colored lights, which my colorblindness went, oh, that's a weird thing. Anyway, so I've got into this with so many people, and all I was trying to do was understand why people were getting so upset about this on both sides. So let me finally get to this. Wow, this has been a long video. Let me get into what this has to do with gaming and why I'm talking about this here. A lot of you are watching this and you want to get in the game industry. Well, let me tell you about why what I just said, trying to understand people's point of view, will directly impact what happens to you when you get into gaming. And I can think of 3 things right off the top of my noggin. 1, if you become a lead, you are going to have to manage a lot of different people. I've talked about this and how you have to work in teams. Even if you're not managing, you have to work in teams. And there are accommodations you have to do because not everybody works the same way and not everybody thinks the same way. And if you can't think of how other people are approaching issues, you're going to be really bad when you have to manage or even work in teams. Because if everything has to be your way or the highway, you're going to be out in the highway very quickly. So that's the first reason I think it's important to try to at least understand where the other person's coming from. The second one is when you want to discuss ideas. I have a whole video on brainstorming. You really, really want to be able to understand the other person's point of view. People will often throw out an idea that at first, when you first hear it, you're like, well, that won't work. That couldn't possibly work. But then you listen to them. You ask questions. You ask how things would work. And it turns out this is really a good idea. It's a novel approach to something you've bounced off of because you saw a problem, but their approach bypasses that problem. Brilliant. But you only get there if you try to understand what it is they're saying. That's the second thing. The third thing is, this is to a subset of people, to the designers and specifically to narrative designers. If you want to make different NPCs in your game, you're going to have to be really good at understanding other people's point of view. If you want to write a villain, I'm going to assume you're not a psychopath, that you're not a killer. But you may need to write a character that does that. And if you want it to sound genuine, if you want this person to sound like they have real reasons for doing what they're doing, you're going to have to understand why people would do something like that. I have a video on how to write evil characters, and then I have just a video on how to make well-written characters. I said writing good NPCs. I really mean well-written NPCs. Those videos are linked below. If you want to be good at that, you are going to have to be good at understanding other people's point of view. At least understanding it enough that you can write a convincing character who says they espouse those other ideas. And if you think you can only write characters that feel the way you do, then you're going to be a very one-note narrative designer. And I think a lot of people recently have gotten a little upset at one-note narrative designers that write deep characters that feel a certain way, and then really shallow characters that feel any way that disagrees with that way. So I think if you want to be a good writer, you're going to have to understand other people's points of view. So that is my whole video. That's why I try to understand different people's point of view for game reasons. But also, I just like to know what's going on in other people's noggins. So I hope that helps people, or at least helps people if you have something in your job that you're having trouble understanding. That's okay. Ask questions about it. That's what I do.